Your boy's back from holidays, and it appears to be at the perfect time as we've just had a huge 450 player regulation age tournament with some pretty interesting meta development. We saw Vivillon, Araquanid, Blaze Breed, Tauros, and Gengar all get some pretty solid results. We also saw the rise of both Sun and Trick Room, while we also saw a bit of a decrease in Rain, and there was a new balance course starting to make ways through the meta. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, as we said there, this was the VGC Tour Open, VGC Trainer School Open, I should say. Sorry, a $400, dollar prize pool here, and the amount of players, I'm pretty sure it was like close to 450. If I go show all players, does this show me how many players there were? Ooh, yeah, 435 players. So a pretty big tournament that was taken here by none other than Sunroom Size Spam. I normally just call it Sunroom. It's got a bit of Size Spam in it, of course. Matthew H, fellow Australian here, pulled it out with a very interesting take on the team. Obviously, it is a bit interesting to see Sun doing so well. I definitely saw a lot of potential in the the play style. But there were a couple interesting things with this team, right? So obviously, everyone kind of knows what Size Spam is at this point, right? Indeedee plus Hatterene in Trick Room is just a very potent combo. Obviously, Indeedee there has redirection, it has the Psychic Surge, stopping things like Fake Out, and then of course you have the Hat here with Life Orb, Trick Room, and then just 3 attack to deal a lot of damage basically inside the Trick Room. Terrifier, I do think, is very good into things like Goldango, because basically any neutral Terra and you're still just going to get bopped by Terra Steel, make it rain. So having something like Terrifier, I do think is very important. And then, of course, here, Mystical Fire, just a pretty good stab, especially when you are Terrifier. And also, potentially, when you have the Sun set up. Torkoal, obviously, is one of the best Trick Room sweepers in the game. Terrifier Choice Specs makes those eruptions go burr. Of course, we do have Hisui and Lilligant here as well, which is the main partner for Torkoal in Sun. Very interesting, though, is this Lilligant does not actually have access to a Grass-type move, which I did think was really interesting, because normally one of the best ways to, beat things like Rain is to have access to, Grass-type moves, because obviously it helps you out a lot into some of the Water types, things like Vascular Legion, that could be really annoying. But on this set, they did opt for Triple Axle, which I do think in this metagame with a lot of dragons running around, Triple Axle is actually pretty damn solid. Then we had, the Glade, obviously a staple on Size Spam right now. Glade giving you, a strong fighting type that also is very good in the, cyclic terrain. It's just really, really nice. Things like Sharpness, Scope Lens, Sacred Sword is very good into things like Incineroar. And then, of course, you're a Wide Guard Mon. You can also set up Trick Room as well if your team needs it. And not to mention, Psycho Cutter from this Mon in the terrain does ridiculous amounts of damage. But the final piece as well here, which was the Araquanid, I did think was super interesting. Obviously, Araquanid is a fantastic support piece. It's very bulky, has access to Wide Guard. But its liquidations are incredibly powerful, and I would not be surprised if that was kind of one of the answers into Rain, right? You just say, hey, I've got my Spider here, they set up the Rain, I'm just going to click, Water Bubble liquidations in the Rain, which is pretty damn pog. And of course, having Leech Life also is pretty damn solid. So the runner-up team here as well was a pretty cool team, a very hyper-offensive team, something similar to what I have spoken about using myself in the past. This is just basically Goldango hyper-offense, pairing it up with Choice Scarf, Vascular Legion. Again, Vascular Legion, with adaptability, Choice Scarf gives you a very solid mod into Rain teams, right? Because one, you're abusing their Rain, you've got adaptability giving you that extra stab on your Wave Crash. And not to mention, Choice Scarf, Last Respects, will just absolutely decimate teams in the endgame if you allow it to. Of course, Goldango with Choice Specs, Terra Steel, paired up with, Priority Tailwind is incredibly good. We've also got Indeedee here as well, gives you a Trick Room mode when, if you need it for things like the Blood Moon Ursaluna, obviously. But also on this team as well, this is the weak armor stuff with the Armorers, right? Where you got weak armor, Terrifier. So you can potentially go for things like, flip turning off your own Armorers. I don't think that's necessarily the smartest thing in the world, but you can definitely do it. But yeah, you go for things like Endure Flip Turn, you get into your Indeedee, and then that just goes, hey, I've now got a +2/+2/+2 Armorers. And I'm just going to start clicking Expanding Force and Terrain. So a very, very good hyper-offensive team here. Yeah, really, really cool. I will say as well, this event absolutely dominated by Italian players. Like, look how many Italian players are here in like the top 16. Absolutely crazy. But yeah, really cool, showcase there of the hyper offense. We see another team here as well, which is a core I personally believe a lot in, which is the setup Komodo here. Basically, you pair this piece up with things like Incineroar, the Sinistra, the Smeagol. And yeah, you kind of just allow the Komodo to set up. And then, of course, as well, one of Komodo's biggest, issues, are things like, hitting steel types, right? Hitting Goldango is one of its biggest issues, especially if you're playing like the body press stuff. Having Iron Head to help you hit things like fairy types. So I'm a huge fan of this set here with the Terrifier Flamethrower, pairing it up with Torkoal as well. And one of the cool things about AV Torkoal as well is it actually gives you a pretty solid matchup into things like Dondozo, right? Because with the Assault Vest, you don't necessarily have to have this mon dealing damage. It's quite bulky. It can normally survive a hit or two and doesn't necessarily rely on the Eruption. Of course, if you're going up against opposing Trick Room teams, you do have Eruption to, come in the late game with Terrifier. But again, it allows you, to sit in front of things like Dondozo, potentially eat a Wave Crash off it, get off a clear Smog, and just, be really consistent. But yeah, this is just a really cool setup team built around the Komoro, right? Of course, you've got the choice specs, Golden Go here, where, again, this one pairs up incredibly well with both Incineroar and Smeagol, right? They both have Fake Out. You got Follow Me from the Smeagol. Of course, you got, Taunt from the Incineroar as well to stop, annoying setup. Sinister here does give you a Trick Room mode if you need it again. Also pairs incredibly well with Incineroar being like a pivot next to the Komoro, right? Because you can go for things like, lead the Incin, you go Fake Out, setup, right? And then, obviously when you use your signature move on Komoro, you sacrifice, I think it's like 33% of your health. So then, go for things like Protect, pivot into the Sinister, and then you can just go back into Incineroar. Now they're -2, you've healed it back to full. And yeah, it's just a really good combo. And Smeagol, this is another one I didn't mention in the intro, but I definitely do expect to continue to see rise up. It did have quite a few decent results at this event. And yeah, I think people forget how annoying Smeagol can be, outside of restricted formats. But yeah, a really cool offensive team here by Desu. Oh, my mouse is cooked, man. I gotta fix that. This here, pretty standard team. I'm not going to talk about it too much because this team, or at least this archetype, does feel like it's kind of figured out almost. This is just like the Dondozo HO, right? Where, you've got some pieces. Obviously, this version of it, I guess, is slightly different. Everything here besides the Rillaboom are quite standard on this team. Obviously, you've got the Talonflame here setting up for you. You've got the Glamora, which can be super annoying, right? Because you can use it, you lead it next to Talonflame. You use the Meteor Beam stuff, you nuke something. If you get up the Toxic Debris, great. You Dozo in the late game, can go for things like Yawn into Protect, be super annoying. Yeah, it's just, I mean, Yawn plus Toxic Debris, I guess, doesn't really work, but obviously, against other, annoying pieces, it is pretty solid. I will say the one slight difference to this team, though, is Goldie plus Rilla. Normally on teams like this, you will see Specs Golden go paired up with the Talonflame, so you can go for like Terra Steel, make it raid, and basically just nuke through everything to set up for the Dozo. But I will say having Metal Coat obviously is definitely a solid trade-off. And not to mention, everyone knows Nasty Plot Golden Go paired up with Rillaboom is one of the most annoying combos to deal with in the metagame. But yeah, this is really cool. We also see like Plot Tatsugiri as well with Focus Satch, which I do think is really interesting. The Dozo set, again, it has Yawn, which is definitely kind of crazy, but Wave Crash Order Up are pretty staple in this one right now. And of course, you got the Rillaboom, so why would you be running Earthquake? It does feel pretty damn bad to do that, but yeah, really cool team here as well. One thing I will say I like about this as well is going Cloak here, but going Taunt Double Stab is really interesting. A lot of the time when you see, the Cloak stuff, you'll see it go like, Taunt plus Will-O-Wisp. But I will say this is a really nice take on it, and I am a huge fan of it. So next team here is our first showcase of Rain, and I believe it's our only one in the top 8 from what I can see. There is only one Pelipper in the top 8 here. Technically, there is 3 in the top 16, 4 in the top 16, sorry. A lot of them fell inside of the top 16 there. But yeah, our first take on Rain here, and this is a relatively standard take on it, right? I don't think this is anything too crazy. Obviously, you got Pelipper Archaludon right now, which is the absolute staple on this kind of core. Basculin Legion here as well with Choice Scarf Adaptability, which I do think on Rain is also really good. Obviously, you don't have Swift Swim there for the speed control, but I do think having Scarf Wave Crash in Rain with adaptability is kind of, pretty broken. Obviously, Golden Go here also pairs incredibly well with Rain, obviously slowing down a lot of the fire types, very similar to Amoonguss here. And of course, Golden Go with Life Orb plus Rillaboom is just a very potent combo. One thing I will say though, this is something we have seen pick up a little bit, which is the loaded Dive Bullet Seed stuff. The reason this is so good is 1, you give Archaludon Fake Out support, but 2, Archaludon 4x resists Bullet Seed, and you're going to get at least 4 of them off, which means your Archaludon's Body Presses turn 1 do a ridiculous amount of damage if you just side Bullet Seed, which is really crazy. But yeah, this is just a really good take on Rain. Nothing too crazy about it. Obviously, Amoonguss, with Clear Smog here, which you answered it on Dozo. And yeah, this is just a really solid team, dude. I'm a huge fan of it. And yeah, just a really cool take on, Rain. Obviously, a nice adaptation here as well. So yeah, really cool. Now, so this team here does actually cover off a few of the mons I touched on at the start of the video, which is some of the mons that are rising up right now. So we see here, this is Blade Breed Tauros. I'm so used to saying Aqua Breed. But Blaze Breed Tauros has finally had a pretty solid showing. I do think this one with Clear Amulet is incredibly good. The max set on this basically gives you a really good matchup into things like Incineroar. Also gives you a really good matchup into Pokemon like Hydreigon, which has actually surprisingly dropped off a little bit. But I will say as well, one of the things the Tauros forms have over a majority of the other Intimidators is a really good matchup into King Gambit, which is the one we do see on this team here. But yeah, basically close combat will absolutely nuke it. And also thanks to your typing being a fighting type and a fire type, you also resist both of its, stab moves, which is very, very interesting. We also see Vivillon here kind of rising up. Now, this is the one that has actually started seeing a little bit more play at this event. I think it was played 3 times in total. We'll check that at the end, but they all had really good results. Obviously, Friend Guard is really good on setup sets, right? And you look at this team here, obviously they've got both Gambit and Primarina. So you got Friend Guard Redirection. This Pokemon also has access to Tailwind as well, which is really interesting. And of course, both Pollen Puff and Sleep Powder as well, right? And when you got access to Terra Ghost, you don't necessarily have to care too much about things like Fake Out. And again, this one can just run like max speed, max attack. You can side pole and puff up your King Gambit, your Primarina, whatever it is you want. You can also lead this thing next to Dragapult, right? And basically just redirect, giving it Friend Guard and allowing it to spam out Choice Banded Dragon Darts, which is very, very solid. And yeah, this is just a really cool take on balance, right? King Gambit is one of the main pieces I was talking about in terms of balance right now. It really feels like the Fire Water Grass plus Gambit is incredibly good right now. Now, this take was slightly different to what I've seen. Rillaboom is, I would say, the most staple piece of a Fire Water Grass balance right now. Blazebreed Taurus is definitely a really cool take on it. One of the other ones we've seen picking up a lot as well is Volcarona, and I'm sure we'll see that as we go through the event. But Primarina right now is kind of solidifying itself as well as one of the premier water types in the format, if not the premier water type in the format. You pair this thing up with Calm Mind, Leftovers, plus Rillaboom, and this one can be incredibly deadly, right? Especially when you have things like Intimidate coming off of the Aqua Breed Taurus, right? When you have the Vivillon here, with Friend Guard allowing you to set up, potentially side pole and puff as well. Yeah, it's just a really cool take, right? You've got your breakers here with, the Taurus, you've got the Dragapult. You got your Fire Water Grass stuff as well. Of course, your redirection support and Vivillon. And of course, King Gambit, which is just that final piece, right? And again, Goggles gives you another matchup into Amoonguss as well, which I do think is really important because this team really only has Rillaboom and Gambit. Obviously, we have some Terra Grasses on the, the Taurus and on the Primarina as well. But yeah, this team can, potentially struggle into Amoonguss, so I do think having Gambit there with Goggles is very important. So the next team here is a team that is also pretty interesting, right? Again, we have a lot of the staple pieces here, right? We have Amoonguss, we have Incin, right? We have Goldango, 3 of the best Pokemon in the format. This is our first Palafin here today, which Palafin is someone that has definitely dropped a little bit. I expected it to do a bit better. I know a lot of people say its issue is, it takes time to set up, which is true. But in a metagame right now where I think you can potentially afford to play a bit slower if you have, 2 different modes where you say, hey, if I'm going against like Tailwind Hyper Offense, this is what I need to do. But if I'm playing against a balanced team, then I have things like my Palafin, which can go a bit slower. But of course, Palafin, Terra Water, Mystic Water, it has Haze to obviously help out into Dozo. Very, very solid. Again, Choice Banded Dragapult here. One of my favorite mons, definitely a mon I want to, continue to build around. And then the final piece here, which I thought was really interesting, was the Garganackle. Obviously, Garg is a really solid mon. I do think this mon's really good, especially with the right support. And I definitely think, a core of, Amoonguss, Incin, Garg is definitely solid, right? When you have things like Spore, you have, Fake Out, Intimidate, you can really put Garganackle in a position where it can actually start getting off a lot of Salt Cures. And also in some matchups as well, you can just say, hey, this mon's job is to sit here and spam out Wide Guard, right? So really, really cool team here by Sanvi here. And it's really nice as well to see Garg and both Dragapult getting really solid results here. And then I think the final team in the top 8, this is probably the last one we'll have like a really good in-depth look at here, and that is an Amoonguss core. And again, this is not an Amoonguss core, sorry, this is a Volcarona core. Now, funny enough, double fire, double grass, no water for the Fire Water Grass stuff here. But again, we see another Choice Banded Dragapult. Is that actually 3 Banded Dragapults here in the top 8? Dude, that's crazy, dude. My guy Dragapult actually get, Polteasy out here getting some really good results. I absolutely love to see that. But yeah, so we're seeing like Dragapult here. Again, it's the same set, basically. They do opt to potentially drop Outrage for things like Breaking Swipe, but really, really consistent, of course. Incin Rillaboom is just the double Fake Out, Intimidate, Grassy Surge core. Very, very solid. Obviously, Amoonguss paired up with these guys is also really good. Especially too, because Amoonguss right now is in a really good spot, I think. One of its biggest issues is Taunt is running around. There are a lot of Pokemon running Taunt. And because of that, I do think this Mental Herb set here is really good. And we'll kind of touch on that as well when we look at some Clefairy teams, or Clefable teams, I should say. That I do think Redirection plus Mental Herb is incredibly good right now. But really, the main piece of this team here that I think is incredibly good is Volcarona. So, this kind of set here on Volk. Now, I've seen the Terrors change a lot. People I've seen, Grass, I've seen Dragon, Fairy here as well. There are a lot of really good Terrors for it. But really, the main set here is Quiver Dance, Giga Drain, and Fiery Dance, right? This combo is really good. You pair it with things like Incin, Amoonguss, Rillaboom, and there are a lot of teams that just can't deal with it, right? This one gets up 1 or 2 Quiver Dances and basically ends the game, and it's just really, really solid. But the final piece here as well, which I did think was really interesting, was actually the setup T-Tar. Now, T-Tar in the current metagame is a mon that is almost exclusively, it feels like, used with Assault Vest. But the issue is, so is Rillaboom, right? Rillaboom, obviously, occasionally you will, see things like Miracle Seed pick up. But for the most part, they are both AV hogs. But seeing a Dragon Dance T-Tar pick up here, I do think is really interesting, especially where you've got you've got 2 setup pieces, you've got 3 support pieces, and then you've got 1 breaker, right? So it is a really cool team here as well, and definitely a team I want to test out myself, because I do think Chloramulet DD T-Tar has a lot of potential, because this is one that is already so naturally bulky. So when you pair it up with things like Rillaboom, Amoonguss, and Incineroar, I can definitely see a world where this one just sweeps through. And it also feels like Rock Stab in the current metagame is also really good. Same with Dark Stab, right? In a metagame where, you've got things, like Psyspam and Sun both running around, like the team that won it, for example. that team has a lot of issues into T-Tar, right? Obviously, again, you know, there are, of course, the Gallade sitting there being annoying, but there's always, you know, potential ways around that, right? So really, really cool team here as well. I'm a huge fan of seeing both T-Tar and Volcarona setting up on a team like this. So now, I don't want to go too in-depth on a lot of these teams here, but we'll kind of touch on, you know, a few pieces at least. So Clefairy, this is a mod I've spoken about quite a bit. I think, like, Clefable, at least as a redirection piece, is incredibly good right now. Unaware gives you a really good matchup into Dondozo, which is very nice. And you see here also having one of the best stab Moonblast in the game. Skill Swap is also really, really interesting as well. Pretty solid as well if you're playing against things like Side Spam, because you can just like side Skill Swap your own Rillaboom if they're trying to pivot out. Of course, we see another setup Volcarona here, which is very good. Again, we're seeing that core of Volcarona, Rillaboom, and King Gambit, which I do think is incredibly potent together. We also see another Choice Scarf Basculegion, which again is very solid. And then the final piece here, which I am a huge fan of as well, is D-Knight. I think D-Knight is in a very similar spot to Dragapult right now, where one, being immune to Fake Out, and also two, being immune to Intimidate. Actually, I just realized it one's Multi-Scale, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, having both, you know, normally at least the immunity to both Fake Out and Intimidate is very, very solid. But yeah, just a really cool take here as well. And D-Knight, interesting to see multi-scale here, but again, it's still pretty solid. Terra Normal E-Speed is also incredibly good as well into things like, of course, Talonflame and Whimsicott as well. Again, though, normally on a Choice Bandit set, this actually kind of threw me off here that it's like Lumberry multi-scale, but still, nonetheless, a really cool team there. What else do we have here? So this is, this is Marco Fierro's team. Marco, one of the best players in the world. I absolutely love this team. This was probably my favorite team from the event. So there's a few pieces here, right? So one, I think Sun right now is really good. And I think Sunny Day plus Specs Typhlosion is one of the better ways to do it, because one, you know, Typhlosion gives you the ability to, you know, be immune to Fake Out, which is really good when you pair it up with things like, you know, potentially Covet Cloaks or Terra Ghost Tailwind setters. And then two, it's just a Choice Specs mod that does a lot of damage, even if you're not clicking Eruptions, clicking things like, you know, Sunny Day into Heat Wave, or, you know, Tailwind into Eruption, you know, even Shadow Ball into things like Golden Go is very solid. We also have the Power Herb set here on the Archaladon, which again, I'm a huge fan of this. This is basically just 3 special attacks plus Protect. You get the Power Herb Sturdy set with Terra Electric, which is very, very good. And then we have what is probably the sauciest piece of this team. And we have seen people run this in the past, but I don't think to this much success in such a big event. This is the Primarina Meowscarada going for the Pledge move. So basically, you've got this incredibly hyper offensive team, right? You've got the Archaladon, which is decently quick. It's like 85 base speed here. It's kind of whatever. Blood Moon Nurse Luna is really slow, but, you know, it can basically, if you go Timid Max, it is able to outspeed basically the entire metagame. And then you got Primarina, which again is like, it kind of needs to be Timid Max to outspeed everything. But if you go for the Pledge stuff, right, where you go Water Pledge plus Grass Pledge, you can set up the Swamp, which is basically like, effectively like Tailwind doubles your speed. The Swamp reduces the opponent's speed by like, to like 1/4. So basically, yeah, so they go to like 25% speed, which is absolutely crazy, especially with these big 3 special attackers, which I'm a huge fan of. And then on top of that as well, like, Meowscarada is one that can deal a lot of damage, right? If you leave that Meowscarada unchecked and it can just click a couple of Flower Tricks, it will deal quite a lot of damage. But yeah, this is just a really cool team here as well. Primarina, again, like, when I played Pledge back in Reg G, I don't know if anyone saw my Grovyle team, but I played, like, Grovyle plus Primarina on, like, a team with Kali Ice. And that team was, like, really good. And Primarina was a mon where it's, like, you can't ignore this thing. Like, if you let Primarina sit there and click, like, a couple of attacks, it does a ridiculous amount of damage. But, yeah, really cool team here by Marco. Definitely my favorite from the event. God, my mouse absolutely hates me. Is there any other stuff here as well? So we got another, like, this is, like, a Sunroom. Like, this is, like, a really offensive, like, hey, we're either going, like, a hard Tailwind, like, Eruption, or we're going to go, like, Indeedee, like, plus, Torkoal, Ursaluna. So that's another really cool team there as well. It's good to see that Typhlosion's picking up with Sun. I do think that is really, really nice. Anything else here too crazy? This is like a relatively standard rain team with Hisuian Decidueye. Another rain team here as well with Hisuian Decidueye. Relatively standard Dozo. This team here is actually really interesting because it kind of looks a little weak at like first glance, but it actually has a few mons that can deal quite a bit of damage. Obviously, Blood Moon Nurse Luna, Hisuian Decidueye both deal quite a bit of damage. And of course, Arcanine can deal quite a bit itself. Gastro does have some really good matchups, and we also see Whirlpool here, which is really interesting to trap some mons in. Of course, Throat Spray Giraffe also does a bit of damage, and Grimmsnarl actually, is that our first screens for this entire event? I think that might be our first screens, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, look, if you scroll down here, there are a lot of really cool teams as well, right? These are like a lot of 7-3s as well, which is still very impressive in an event like this. We see my guy Salamence pick up here. We see some Aqua Breed here. Back-to-back Clefairy Gengar teams. Now, I do think this is the exact same 6 both times, but nonetheless, this is still a really cool team. We'll take a quick glance, I guess, here. So this is the mental herb stuff as well on Clef, kind of what I was talking about with the Amoongus earlier. This is really good into things like Mouse Ape, because a lot of the time when Mouse Ape goes up against redirection, what they do is they just go for, like, say, for example, protect on the ape, and then they're like, you know, they'll just leave their safety goggles mouse hold there, and the mouse hold will just click like taunt into your redirection piece, and then the next turn is when they'll go for, like, you know, follow me, bulk up, or, you know, beat up, rage fist, whatever it might be, right? Gengar here as well, and again, we'll kind of look at this when we look at the stats for the event, but this month's had a lot of really good showing. So basically, Sash plus Haze gives you a really good matchup into Dozo, and then on top of that as well, you have just Stab, Sludge Bomb, and Shadow Ball, which are both really good in the current metagame. And also with Terra, it allows you just to deal a lot of damage. Of course, we see Gambit, Volcarona, and Rillaboom. We've kind of touched on it a few times already. It's really good. And then, of course, we just have that water type here rounding out the Fire, Water, Grass core. And this time it does have, obviously, Intimidate, which is very good. And with Mirror Herb as well, it gives you a very solid matchup into opposing King Gambits, which I do think is really good because a lot of the time there'll be sets like this where they're going for that Terra Dark. And when you get the +2 off, Intimidate into Defiant here, basically you can just one-shot him with CC, which is very, very good. But yeah, this is a really cool take on the team here. I'm a huge fan of this, and it was really cool to see them basically just finish next to each other here as well, which I thought was sick. More Hisuian, Typhlosion, Sun here. A bit more Komoro balance setup. We see a Bruxish getting an appearance here. We get a bit of Rain Room as well. A couple of Sand teams. You know, T-Tar really showing out at this event. Weezing, I actually played against this team on ladder, I think. This is like super annoying as well. Weezing's just in a really good place where I think Weezing plus like Goldengo can like really nuke a lot of teams because like one, when you remove like a team's like ability to potentially set Tailwind, I think it is really annoying for them. And also too, when you have something like Dragapult that outspeeds the rest of the metagame, you know, you can just say, hey, oh, you're Whimsicott, you're Talonflame, guess what? They're just getting absolutely nuked here by like Terra Ghost, Terra Blast as well, which I do think is really cool. But yeah, you've got your own hyper offensive mode. The Palafin here, I did think was really interesting. I'm pretty sure Palafin works with Weezing. I'd have to confirm that, but I'm almost certain it does. But this team really feels like it doesn't have that defensive switch for the Palafin. But nonetheless, it is really cool. As well, I will say, I do think Meowscarada Triple Axle is definitely one of the coolest techs in the metagame. Basically, the mons that it can't hit with like Knock or Flower Trick do not appreciate getting Triple Axled, which, again, on a really fast Pokemon, into a lot of Pokemon that are like, you know, a lot of teams right now are running Dragons, for example, Dragapult, you know, D-Knight. We've even seen the, what's his called, you know, Komodo rise up a bit. Even Hydreigon when it, you know, it was popular, which it actually has dropped off quite a bit here. I don't actually, we'll have to look at the stats on Hydreigon because that one feels like it's dropped a lot. But yeah, so that is like really, really cool there. But yeah, guys, look, I could be here all day. At this stage, I'm like over 20 minutes into this. There's a lot of really good teams. If you're looking for inspiration, come onto here, you know, look up teams. Like if there's a certain one you want to build around, like we also see Oricorio here as well, like having a 7-3 result, which I did think was crazy, paired up with Clef as well. 3 Clefs in a row, by the way. But yeah, having like an Oricorio with a Volcarona is really solid because like you just have basically double Quiver Dance, and if they don't lead something that can pick up a KO turn 1, it puts them in a lot of trouble. Again, though, as well, we're seeing this core here of like the Fire, Water, Grass stuff plus Gambit. That was an Assault Vest King Gambit though, but yeah, really cool stuff there. I'm just trying to think, is there anything I'm missing? Like we've seen Pawmot rise up a bit. Definitely one of the better electric types in the format right now. I mean, some Politoed Rain. We're seeing a lot more Rain down here in like this, you know, 7-3, 6-4 range. Basically just meaning a lot of good players, you know, kind of knowing their matchups. A 6-3 drop here as well. T-Tar plus Hydreigon is pretty cool. Yeah, we're seeing a lot more Volcarona. Anyway, like, let's just take a look at some stats as well here, I guess, before we wrap things up. So, once again, Rillaboom is the most dominant mod in the format. Incin and Goldengo basically tied as they have been for a very long time. A lot of these mons here, you'll notice they all have negative win rates. What I will say, and I feel like I say this all the time, when it comes to the top usage stat mons, don't forget a lot of the time these mons play against each other, so they're kind of forced into a 50-50, and then like when they lose, a lot of the time it's to people who are prepared for them, right? Like if you're not running Rillaboom at this event, it's a lot of the time you probably have a good Rillaboom matchup. And that's why you see things like Rillaboom with a 47% win rate, but it's also on like 42% of teams almost, which is kind of crazy. But it also shows like when you get Pokemon like Basculin Legion here, King Gambit, Volcarona, that are all incredibly high usage, they all have really good win rates as well, right? These guys are all like plus 50 as well, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, Volcarona kind of taking over as the second best fire type in the format right now over Talonflame, which I'm not kind of surprised by. I really think we were lacking in good fire types, hence why I've personally been using a lot of Hisuian Typhlosion. But yeah, so seeing it rise up there, it was definitely really cool. Blood Moon continuing to get really good usage. Primarina being the second, or actually third most used water type in the metagame as well was really interesting. But of course, Legion Pelipper are on a very common core in Rain. Which again, you're seeing so much Pelipper, but really it's like the only one that like kind of wasn't really dominating the standings. Like when you look here, right, like again, we got 1 inside top 8, 4 inside top 16, which obviously, you know, having a 25% usage, I guess, is still like really solid. But again, when you're the 4th most used mod, I kind of expect to see you a bit more, especially with how high up the other 3 were. We see D-Knight and Default here both having like really solid usage here. D-Knight's usage, win rate was actually a bit lower. Let's have a look at some of the D-Knight teams here, because we had, I guess we had a lot actually at the bottom of the ladder as well, which obviously doesn't help out. But yeah, we see some really cool ones here. I'm assuming this is like a Choice Bandit set. Yeah, that's like a Choice Bandit. Choice Bandit multi-scale. Why is everyone opting for multi-scale right now? That's really interesting. Do we see another one? Dude, another AV multi-scale. Is it just because of like instant usage going down? Like that's got to be it, right? Surely. Are you multi-scale too? Okay, now your Choice Bandit in a focus. Yeah, that's my guy right there. That's actually really interesting to see multi-scale on like the top 3 D-Knights there. Really interesting meta development actually. I didn't even notice that when I was like looking through them. Of course, my guy Dragapult as well here, kind of fitting on a lot of these teams as well. I'm so happy to see Dragapult finding a lot of success. I think that one's really damn good right now. But yeah, obviously we could scroll down here and like look at the usage stats here for a while. But what I'm kind of interested in here is the win rate. So as we see, Vivillon here picked up 3 times. Obviously, you know, it did have a 2-2 drop. But the other 2 players that ran this went 9-3 and 8-2, which I do think is very impressive. One of which on a rain team, and the other actually both paired up with Dragapult as well, which is kind of interesting there as well. But yeah, they both got their, you know, fire type intimidate piece as well. Fake out grass type on as well. So yeah, really cool to see Vivillon there having such a high win rate, which I did think was really crazy. Obviously Araquanid and Blaze Breeze, 2 mons we kind of touched on at the start here. Araquanid obviously did go on to win it, but we did have a 5-3 drop as well, which did pretty solid with it. And then Blaze Breeze Tauros as well. Obviously having a, you know, a top 8 there was really good. And my guy Sableye VGC as well, rocking it here with a 3-2 drop. So I'm kind of sad Ryan didn't go any further. I feel like he's definitely a good enough player where he could have definitely got a better result if he kept playing. But obviously it is what it is. We also see Gengar here as well, which is probably like the big surprise one here. Having 15 uses with such a high win rate as well, right? So obviously we see the 2 7-3s here, but a lot of really solid ones as well, like a 4-1 drop here, 5-3 as well. So seeing Gengar like rocking a 58% win rate is definitely kind of crazy. Garganacl had a really good win rate as well. Obviously Hisuian Typhlosion, another big one. This is a mon, as I said, I've been working with Hisuian Typhlosion a lot myself. I think the Sunny Day plus Eruption stuff is really good. And we're kind of seeing that, right? If you look at all of its partners here, we see Murkrow, right? We see Whimsicott plus Torkoal. We see Whimsicott here. We see Whimsicott here, right? So very, very common here. This team here was definitely interesting. Does Illumise have Sunny Day? Okay, Illumise with Sunny Day is also really interesting there as well. But yeah, it's basically always paired up with Sunny Day in some regard. Normally always paired up with Whimsicott as well here. So as you can see, it's just Whimsicott all the way down to like a 2-1 team. So Hisuian Typhlosion is definitely one of the better fire types in the metagame right now as well. So if that's something you're looking for, definitely keep an eye on that. Hisuian Decidueye continuing to get really solid results as well. Dozo being Dozo. Usage isn't incredibly high, but its win rate is. My guy Frostmoth, this is one I've been building with a little bit here. I'm definitely going to have to take some inspiration from some of these teams. I personally, I won't lie, I've been playing with Hisuian Samurott. I do think it is a really good combo. But yeah, that is really, really cool. But yeah, look, there's a lot of pieces here. I could honestly talk all day about the stats and whatnot, but I think we'll finish it up here. We're approaching 30 minutes, so yeah, I don't want to go too long, especially because I'm feeling a bit under the weather. So that'll be that, I guess, for the tournament. I'll quickly just like touch on a few other things as well, like outside of this event in particular. I just want to say, obviously, one, if you noticed, the videos were not as frequent the last few days. Your boy was on holidays, and unfortunately, I'm also feeling a little bit sick, so I hope that didn't kind of come across in the video today. At the time of recording this, I landed like literally 2 hours ago and came home. So yeah, I jumped straight into it. I was excited to make this video. But yeah, my throat is definitely not holding up as much as I would have hoped for. Obviously, too, I just want to say a massive, you know, once again, a massive thanks for all the support recently. I think, you know, I pre-recorded 2 videos before I left. Uploaded them. They both hit like 5K views in the first day. So for me, that's pretty damn sick. And I honestly, truly appreciate it. You know, my goal for the end of this year originally was 10K. I moved it to 7K. I was like, I don't even think I'm going to be able to hit 7K, but we've gained like almost 2,000 subs in the last month, which is, yeah, it's honestly unbelievable how quickly we kind of grew. And honestly, I'm incredibly grateful for all the support I've had. And yeah, if you guys could continue to, you know, support me a bit more, I would truly appreciate it. But yeah, anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this one. And yeah, catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.